Hi, this is Dr. Tony Cooper, and this is Life Without Baggage, where I'm sharing insights with you of how to develop a stronger sense of self, establish firmer boundaries, and also lean into the gentle promptings of the Holy Spirit, who will help you navigate life. Right now, we're in the series on recognizing narcissism. Before we get into today's episode, let me invite you to send your questions in so I can answer them in future episodes. And also to check out the bonus videos that are posted in between episodes. They'll help you grow in that stronger sense of self and leaning into the Holy Spirit. Also, there's a link that will take you to my books on Amazon. Each of my books will help you grow in that stronger sense of self and unload baggage. So, without further ado, let's get into today's episode where we're talking about narcissism in the workplace. Okay, so my guest today is Curtis Didato. He's done a couple of other podcasts with me recently, but here he is in video format with me today. So I'm going to introduce him and then we'll be talking about narcissism in the workplace. So Curtis is the president of Didato Consulting. He has a SHRM certification. His gifts and emphasis are in the personal development and organizational development for the fulfillment of their mission and calling to be their best. So he also has worked in the past, let me make sure I get this right, for AML RightSource and NESCO Resources. He has a bachelor's degree in education from Miami, so that makes him a good trainer. And he has a master's in business administration from Miami. He has been on staff for nonprofit organizations. He's been a special ed teacher. He has been a coach. And his interests are in soccer, running, trail racing, and music. So if you follow him on Instagram, you'll get a taste of his musical interests. So Curtis, have you had any experience with narcissism in the workplace?
Together. So absolutely. I think about different experiences that we've come into contact, and I've worked with a lot of different people in a number of different fields, from clients to colleagues to bosses to C-suites, you name it. I've had some experience in all of those. And it seems to be one of those issues that it's always a little bit difficult to figure out how to engage with a narcissist. There's a lot of different signs. So I want to run through one example of an interaction that I had. That I was working with someone at a organization, and we had a pretty solid conflict. There was one situation, there was some stress, there were some deadlines, there was a lot of work that was going to need to be done. And I'll just say this, that the interaction did not go well between myself and this other individual. So a few days later, we had a meeting to kind of clear the air a little bit, and the initial meeting did not go well. And I presented this individual with some facts that were said during this initial conflict that were factually incorrect. And so when I presented these details, this person said, I did not say that, and that is not true. So I started with this and say, okay, so this approach is not going to work by presenting facts or information. So we worked through that, and I'm like, I've got to adjust the way that I communicate, because I know what needs to be said. And so as we work through, I'm very accommodating with people, but I'm like, I'm still going to hold firm to who I am and what I believe, and I'm not going to cater. The question inevitably came up from the other person that said, well, Curtis, I'm worried about you. How are you doing? And they completely deflected this conversation that was talking about what was going on to then try to establish a power dominance to make it seem like it was something that was wrong with me. And I responded, I said, I'm great. Like, I'm doing very, very well, because I'm like, I'm not going to engage with this. We need to talk about this situation. We need to talk about this emphasis versus like this individual saying that, making it about my issues. And I'm like, listen, I know what my issues are, and this is not one of them. This is not one of them. So it was just this, like, it left me with a feeling afterwards of, I'm like, no matter what I said, it probably didn't matter. It really didn't matter, but I needed to find a way to help smooth this relationship over, because we still had to work together. And that was a little bit of a tricky piece.
Yeah. Okay. So in previous episodes, I've posted the 9 signs of narcissism. I'll put that up for the viewers to see while we're talking. So they didn't stick to the topic. They made it about something else. They denied their responsibility and even the words that came out of their mouth. Yeah, that sounds narcissistic.
It was. And so, after I will say this, that after we had that conversation, it gave me some clarity to say, okay, this isn't about me. There's nothing else that I could have done in this situation. Maybe I could have changed my approach slightly that made it a little less forceful in the beginning, rather than me saying, this is what you said that was not correct, rather than having them chance to deny that. But I thought about it. I'm like, we still have to work together. So how can I engage this person to say, hey, to a certain extent, like, you have to stroke the ego of narcissists to a certain extent. And it's not in a manipulative way. It really, really wasn't, because we still had to work together. We had a project. I could have done things a little bit differently that said, hey, I understand where you're coming from. I understand what these details are. And hey, here's some of my concerns about this as we move forward, because I want to make sure this project goes better, versus coming in guns blazing, which sometimes work, but within this case, Tony, that it was not successful.
Yeah. Yeah. In the episode where we looked at narcissism, actually with your dad, my brother Vince, did I mention Curtis is my nephew? That we talked about that two big approaches that narcissists use is kind of like the schmoozing, the charming to get you off the topic, or the bullying. And they might even go back and forth between what I call the carrot and the stick. Here's the carrot, here's, what I would like you to do for me. Or here's the stick, here's what's gonna happen to you. I'm gonna demean you if you don't do what I want. So it sounds like this person was a little bit of the schmoozer, the charmer, and not going to take responsibility for things, not going to try to help you solve the problem. So one of the things I let people know is, if you feel demeaned, that's probably signs that this is a narcissistic individual or culture. And this isn't for us to diagnose people. It's more to understand. You don't need to blame yourself, but you do want to have some kind of strategy.
Yep. No, I completely agreed with that. One piece that I think that we can do as well, Tony, because, what I like about learning about how people are wired, or maybe some of their tendencies as well, is this is not a way for us to say, well, in the workplace, I work with this narcissist, and because of this, like, I can't do this. It's like, yes, we all work with people and we've all got stuff. So one thing that I try to keep in mind, and again, we've all got our stuff, but one thing I try to keep in mind is, especially in working with narcissists, because, in other spots of our lives, maybe it's family members or friends, that if people are not engaging and not valuing to us, we can oftentimes put up pretty strong boundaries and to say, I'm not going to engage with this person, or it's going to be very, very limited. Within the workplace, it's different, because it's like, this might be a boss, this might be a superior, this might be a colleague, that we can't just be like, nope, I'm going to put up super, super strong boundaries and cut them out. There still has to be a way to engage. So one thing I like to think about is to say, think about narcissism as a way of, there's a lot of insecurity that it's typically wrapped up within narcissism. The way that it presents is to say it's going overconfident, I'm unapproachable, like, I know what's best, because they don't want accountability, they don't want feedback. And so just to try to personalize this out too, and not to say we're demonizing the narcissist, it's like, no, that's not what we're doing, but we want to understand what they're going through and to help protect ourselves. I mean, that's really what it comes down to, is to say, we've got to work with them, we have to engage, but they're still a human, and they're wrestling with, they're wrestling with their stuff too.
Okay. So, Curtis, I'm going to give you an example of something I dealt with in the workplace a long time ago. And you can give me a suggestion if this was the wrong thing.
Okay.
So I had a person that occasionally supervised me. And so when she was in charge of me, I was still in my training. I had to get along with her because there were things I needed from her. And, I was in training. So situations kept coming up where I was being demeaned and dismissed. I knew what was happening.
Yep.
And so rather than get all emotional, I figured out that, okay, I need a different strategy because being assertive, asking for what I need, that's not going to work. So I thought, okay, she needs her ego stroked.
Yep.
So I can either fight with her or I can be smarter than her. So I went the smarter route. So what I did was, knowing that there had to be some insecurities operating, I figured out I am going to approach this individual where I'm asking for her help on, can you recommend a book on such and such?
Yep.
Hey, do you know about a group that would help a client with, this, that, or the other? Now, I didn't need her help,
Right.
but since I was trying to build a bridge and I needed to get along with her, I knew that if I do something to stroke her ego a little bit without being fake,
Yep.
that she would soften her interactions with me. And lo and behold, that is what happened.
Yeah, I completely agree with that approach. I wouldn't have recommended anything else because Tony, I completely agree with you. And I think you took the right path. That again, you hit on a key point there, that it's not manipulative. It's not anything that we're trying to do to say, okay, we want to let this person know they do have strengths, they do have abilities, they do have insights that are we might be able to learn from, rather than like they come across as super negative and condescending. It's like, well, that might be the case, but there's always something that we can probably take away with this. Tony, I've done very similar things in my career as well when it's come down to major projects where I've had to get buy-in from people. I have very much said to them, and this is absolutely true, because what I don't want to recommend is to say, go in and fluff people up and blow smoke and, puff them. I'm like, no, 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 no. Like, it has to be genuine. So you've got to identify what are the strengths that these people have. And so for this project that I was working on, I said, okay, you are the expert in this space. And I think we would really benefit from what you have to share about this, because you know about way more about this than I do. And those were all facts. I was not being deceptive. I was not being, but we had to collaborate together. And because of that, I just knew that our relationship was going to be relatively transactional, that there was something I needed, there was something they needed, and we worked on it together. But I was not expecting anything else of, us connecting on an individual basis, on a professional basis. I knew where that relationship was going to stop, and I was completely okay with that. Where I think we can run into trouble in working with the narcissist as well, is to try to expect something that they're not going to be able to engage us with, and that's where it gets a little bit tricky. So kudos to you. Very much approve. Agree with how you did it. I'm like, it really is. That's about all you can do.
So it's important for us to stay true to ourselves, is what you're saying, to be our authentic self. But we need a strategy. And what I find is that a lot of people will either get confrontational, which will not work, or they try so hard to be liked that you're giving away your power.
Correct. And then it's a lose-lose. So then you just keep giving and giving and giving and expect, like, okay, well, maybe one day that they'll value me and appreciate what I have to say. And, maybe they'll give me some opportunities to promote me and give. It's unlikely that is going to happen. It's not.
Yeah. So the three things that I talk about with people in how to protect yourself in a narcissistic culture or with a narcissistic individual is, you need a strong sense of self. You need some pretty firm boundaries. And from a spiritual standpoint, to let the Holy Spirit help you discern what's going on. If you feel like something's not right, that is probably accurate. So don't blame yourself, but look for what can you do to build a bridge in a way that isn't demeaning to yourself, but is authentic. And what can we do, to get this job done? Recognizing that they have some needs that if you can address in an authentic way, you may get some cooperation. You're not going to be buddies, and you're not trying to get them to like you. You just want to have a harmonious workplace.
Correct. Completely agreed. Those are great steps. Those are absolutely great recommendations and great steps to follow.
Do you have any other suggestions, Curtis, for how to navigate in the workplace so that you protect your sense of self, you have firm boundaries, but you're still approachable?
I think that's a key of that. We want to still remain kind to people. But we have to have an understanding to say, my kindness is not to try to build a relationship with this person. My kindness, because that's who I am. And I do want the best for them. And I do want the best for the organization. So we've got to find ways to work together. Outside of that, having someone you can bounce ideas off of and say, this is what I tried. This is where I need support. Do you have any other recommendations? Because what I found a lot of times, especially with dealing with difficult personalities, or we need other people to help us process what we're going through and what we've tried from an outside perspective. So that would be my other piece, whether it be someone else in the workplace that you trust. Maybe it's better to get a friend or family member or someone or a therapist as well to talk with someone about how you're engaging, because it can be very, very frustrating and very draining trying to build a relationship with someone who clearly does not have the relational capacity to build that relationship in reciprocity. So, just know you're doing everything you can, but regardless of how much effort you put into it, it's always going to reach a limit. So my thought on boundaries: protect yourself. That's what it's about. Protect yourself and protect your energy.
That's right. Well, thank you, Curtis, for all these insights in how to operate in a narcissistic environment in the workplace. What's the best way for people to get in touch with you if they would like some help for their business or building a department or a training? How can they get a hold of you?
Best way is through email. So it's my first name, Curtis, at didatoconsulting.com. Definitely be glad to connect with people. And again, really what my heart is about helping individuals and organizations reach their potential. It's very holistic. There's a lot of things to consider in that. It's not a one and done type deal, but as we're people and growing, there's going to be new situations that we face every day. So that's what really excites me. So Tony, I very much appreciate you having me on your podcast today and getting to share some of these experiences that I've had.
And there'll be a link in the program notes to your website.
Very good. Very much appreciated.
So thanks everybody for watching. This is Life Without Baggage. Today, my guest has been Curtis Didato. If you enjoyed this, think about subscribing and share it with a friend. Thanks, Curtis.
Thank you, Tony.
Hi, everybody.